game I played on Chess24, around about the 1200 ranking level, so it's not terribly high, but it's where I am, and hopefully the game will be enjoyable anyway to watch. My opponent went for a queen's-sized start, d4, I went knight f6 as is traditional, and c4, this is a well-known opening. Breaking from well-known openings, I like to play c5 here. The idea being is to get his queen out and attack it if possible. I'm offering him a pawn, but he just went d5, giving himself a nice strong pawn centre and blocking me out of the game slightly. But I wanted to challenge this immediately with pawn to e6. Knight c3, which is pretty standard, again putting weight onto d5. E takes d5 and knight takes d5, but I again pressing on with wanting to draw his queen out. I take it back, and then rather than taking with the pawn, he does take with the queen, which gives me opportunities, and ultimately I think is why I won the game. Pawn to d6, just strengthening that, backing up that pawn and giving my queen room to move. Now h4 is a funny move. The idea I think is to give himself a defense for the knight eventually ending up on g5, but also his queen, his rook can swing out and play a part in the game. Queen to d7, ultimately e7 would have been better, as you'll see, but d7 is good enough for now and protects the f7 pawn and also the b7 pawn as will be needed. Knight to f3, again preparing to bring the knight right out to attack. Knight to c6, giving myself an option of one day going on to d5, which I'm eyeing up a possible fork onto the king and the rook, which is could be nice. Pawn to g3, I think he's abandoned swinging the rook out. He's now going to swing his bishop out. Here, attack my queen on this diagonal. b6, giving room here. I wanted to line my bishop up with his queen and play some kind of discovered trick, which rather tickled my fancy. He's going all out for the jugular with g5, but unfortunately he's also now not defending d5, and that will prove a big problem for him. He's not threatening mate because the queen's there at the moment. I can also afford time to execute my plan of going to bishop to b7, and you can probably guess where I'm going next, but I was quite proud of it anyway as a humble player. Bishop to h3, attacking my queen rather nastily, but luckily I can just go to e7 and I'm still protecting everything I need to protect, and also lined up with his king, which again will prove relevant. Bishop to f4, really going for the jugular in terms of planning to play bishop takes, what's this, d6, and attack my queen, and my queen is running out of squares really, but unfortunately so is his, because the very last move of the game, before he resigned, I played knight to d5, a discovered attack on the queen, and threatening checkmate on e2, and with this idea of a king fork as a third threat. And the best I can find for him to do, I mean, you're going to lose the queen anyway, or lose the game, is to take that with check, and I can take his queen, but then he can take mine with the knight. So the checkmate threat has gone, obviously. I'm still threatening the fork up here, but he's also threatening my rook. And the best I can find for him and me is to, if I have to take the knight immediately, otherwise I lose that rook. And he's then got time to move his rook away from my bishop. So let's say he plays there, but I can then, I've still got that backed up, and he then has to move his king. I take his rook, and of course he can take back. So at the end of all of this activity, I've got 2 rooks and 2 bishops, and he's got 2 bishops and 1 rook. So I'm a rook up through that manoeuvre. I think he could have played on even a rook down at this level. He's got slightly more pawns than me, and maybe he could have played it out. Maybe he could have flagged me at the end of the game. But I was quite proud of the d5 manoeuvre. And the threats on his queen at the time must have seemed astronomical, and he thought, okay, I'm just going to resign. But an interesting and nice game, I thought, and thanks for watching.